Aashly Thomas. Throughout her career, she has had the opportunity to work with individuals from all walks of life. Her experience in coaching has taught her how to build meaningful connections with people, while her background with specialized consultations in customer service, hairdressing, architecture, and design have given her the skills needed to effectively facilitate a well-rounded environment. Miss Aashly, welcome. Thank you for joining me on the show today.
Hello, my sweets. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy we're doing it. We're doing it.
We're doing it. Yes, for context for our audience, Ash and I first met at a business networking event, and I have a very love-hate relationship with networking events, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But Ash was the only one I felt like I could talk to who wasn't playing superficially, and better still, she had no agenda whatsoever. She just genuinely wanted to know me, and vice versa, 100%. But we have been friends ever since, and I'm so grateful that she is my guest today. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation with you, beautiful one.
I am so looking forward to this as well. I feel like it's been a long time coming, but I'm so excited. The serendipitous of our whole encounter, our whole connection is just led to this moment right here.
It has, it absolutely has. So, Ash, today I thought maybe we could talk about relationships. It's a topic that we're both passionate about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, 100%.
Yeah. And we know that there are lots of different cycles that happen in relationships, whether it's in business or in personal life. But in your opinion, when you look at relationships, what cycles stand out the most to you?
Ooh, cycles are a funny one. I think every cycle that comes into your life is for a reason. They're all lessons. At the end of the day, we can label them cycles, we can label them lessons, and really it means the same thing, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's very interesting because I'm a huge believer of all of those cliches, nobody meets by accident, and souls are destined to meet at a certain time in a certain place, and everyone's in your life for a reason or a season, you love all of those little, catchy things, but I 100% believe that that's true. Like, to be in a room because of something completely different, and then to meet someone who you have such a connection with, who has helped you to grow and helped you to challenge yourself and hold you accountable. I mean, it's like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and then you have to be able to capitalize on that as well. So yeah, call it cycles, call it lessons. I think that everybody meets at exactly the right time in exactly the right space. So
Yeah, and there's that cliche, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I think that that is so true. I think sometimes we are challenged by the cycles that come with those things, though, because sometimes we want things to be extended and they're not meant to. Some people you just meet and then you have this amazing moment, and then that's the end. And you have to respect that that's the end. And then there are other times where you just know these are, this is a forever person. That's how I feel about you. You're a forever person, but it's you still got to give the relationship grace, because sometimes even when you think that someone's going to be a forever person and you're certain of that, and your friends are in a relationship for a while, sometimes those relationships have to part because there is learning to do somewhere else, isn't there?
absolutely. And I think that it's really hard in the moment, in a relationship, in a connection, to pick that perfect exit point. And sometimes, things expire before we're ready to let go of them. And sometimes, we want to let go of them, but they're not ready to expire. And so they keep on repeating. And we all know how uncomfortable that can be. But again, it's about being able to gain that perspective to learn the lesson. Sometimes we're not ready to. Sometimes we're not ready to see what it is that person is here to teach us, or what we're supposed to gain from this connection. And we're just not there yet. Or maybe you meet somebody and you're totally opposed, like, oh my gosh, no, that's just not a person for me. But that's usually because they're mirroring something back at you that you're not ready to confront yet, or you're not ready to heal yet. You're not ready to work through in that moment. And so you're really repulsed by somebody, not in a negative way, but just in, those energetics are not as cohesive as when you meet somebody and you know that they're your person, or that you'd be able to have an amazing energetic exchange with them. So yeah, I think that again, it just depends on where you are and how you're willing to enter into a connection, how open you can be to receiving.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're right. You mentioned just before, sometimes you're holding on longer than you should, and that's typically when frustration, anger, chaos, arguing, all of that kind of thing starts in those relationships, because there's not a willingness to just let that person go, and it doesn't have to be dramatic. I know before all the and this is full self-awareness and full disclosure, but before I did any of the self work, um it would be a dramatic chain of events if relationships were coming apart, especially if you've got abandonment issues and all of those things. You'd be holding on for dear life, even though those relationships weren't healthy for you, and it can get really disruptive. Whereas now, with all the learning and all the self-awareness, you even though there's a part of you that is sad that relationships um sort of fade out, if you will. It's more gentle, and sometimes it's not even spoken. The relationship just sort of dies down for a while, and maybe they'll reignite and maybe they won't, but it's not you're not clinging to it so tightly that you're creating chaos and drama. And I think that is something that as a society, I think there's some gaps there. I think there's a lot of people still in that fight mode. I feel like there's a lot of people who are holding on to relationships and all sorts of different things, and it's not serving, including work relationships, including their relationship with their employer and so forth. And we see that in business a lot. I'm assuming you see it from your side of things as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's yeah, it's one of those like every connection transforms. We as humans, we're not supposed to stay the same. And it's those ones that can actually move with you and flow with you that are supposed to come along. But I think that the whole treating, like, exiting with grace, that's a big one. But that, unfortunately, it comes with maturity and awareness and, just being able to admit to yourself or, collectively, that not everything is supposed to last. And that's okay, and it's not that you're leaving on a negative note or you're not leaving negative energy behind. Like you said, sometimes it just fades out, and that's okay. And a lot of those people, you I don't know about you, but for me, I know that I can reach out to those people at any time. It's not that something happens within those connections. It's just, it was the time to let it go, and that's okay. And maybe it might come back around, maybe it won't. But making a good connection, and I always say to people who I work with, which was something that I learned, is what do you want your reputation to be? So how you're disconnecting or moving on or transforming these connections, it's all about your reputation at the end of the day. And what do you want that to be? Because you do have control over that to a certain degree. But, leaving relationships and connections the way that you would like them to be left, then, it speaks volumes for who you are and how you show up. And I know your biggest value is integrity. It speaks so much into a person's integrity on how they can communicate where they're at in your connection.
Absolutely. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. And sometimes it's not even about you. It's got
Yeah.
nothing to do with you why that relationship is, it's pulling away. A lot of the time it isn't about you. And so you have to trust that that is, you have to trust in the unfolding, and that if that's what's happening, that's what's happening. And you do need to be graceful, because sometimes even just allowing that other person some space to work through whatever they're working through may mean that they actually see a trust in them, like they see your trust in them, that they're safe to go and explore and do that and come back. And I think that's important in relationships too. And in romantic relationships, I think there could be more of that. But because people are coming in with all sorts of different attachment types, because we know there's anxious attachment, we know that there's avoidant attachment and so forth. So people are triggering each other left and right. But if we just allowed that space and that trust, if those people are working from integrity, of course, then that, that would definitely be a game changer. I especially love what you said about grace, being graceful, and thinking about how, no matter what happens, how do you want that person and those people to feel about that connection? And I know when we look at our society as a whole, again, the unhealed aspects of all of those people are burning things to the ground. I've been one of those people, absolutely. Oh my God, in the 20s, I would burn anything down that I was like, no,
100%.
and fiery little Leo, burning it all. And that, when I look back, I give myself some compassion, because I was young, and it's a form of immaturity when you're behaving in that way. But again, as a society, we're seeing adults, and we're seeing, you know, people in their 40s and 50s still acting out in that way. And those people are responsible for other little humans. They're usually managers in workplaces. And,
Absolutely.
this is where all of that disconnect and disruption as a community is, don't you think?
Absolutely. So when we leave that trail behind us or move out of alignment with where we're supposed to be, that's where toxicity breeds, and all of this toxic behavior that's kind of overflowing into all aspects of life and just society as we know it, is because there's so many people out there just avoiding the inner work, avoiding the healing, avoiding the recognition of their side of things, people wanting to hold on a little bit too tightly to that victim mentality, or something's happening to me, which is fine. If that's where you're at, then that is okay. But you've got to be able to be flexible and maneuver around that, because that's where a lot of this hate and, just not good energy is coming from. All these people who just, and they haven't had the time. Where do you have time to do your healing and your inner work when you work 9 till 5 and you have children and you have this partner who is taking and maybe not giving in the way that you want? And how do you form the good patterns and behaviors and habits around good communication and good, energetic hygiene? How do you even start to address that and start to unpack that whole box? Because it's a big box, it's super deep. It's one of those Mary Poppins bags you just keep. Girl,
It
it's
is.
where toxicity comes from, isn't it?
It is, and it is a Mary Poppins bag. But and this comes back to that space thing. If you're not giving someone space
Yeah,
and allowing them to breathe, because most people, their automatic reaction is that person is pulling away, but
yeah.
maybe they're not pulling away from your relationship, but they're pulling away so they can deep dive into themselves. And again, I feel like a lot of relationships don't allow for that. And then we're seeing that in environments like our workplaces, and we're seeing that as a collective as well. But
Yeah.
what do you think is the resistance to letting the natural course of relationships flow? Like what do you feel is like sitting underneath all of that?
I reckon, like, sitting underneath that, it's unhealed trauma at the end of the day. it's, you know, people want to take something super personal when it's not meant to be personal. And these days, where there's so many different forms of communication and so many different ways for people to obtain information, it's really hard to filter through that to find something that feels aligned and what's the word? I guess authentic to you, but something that fits right. And so I feel like we're trying on all of these different jackets to see if it's how we want to move or if this feels good to us, but maybe it doesn't. And so then we need to go over here and do this. But a lot of people are just uncomfortable in their behaviors because they're unable to show up authentically or as who they are. And that is an uncomfortable process. When you have to play a character, when you go out and interact with people, that's going to be uncomfortable. The
Oh,
only way to get comfortable with it is to deep dive and figure out who you are and figure out what you want and, you know, what your goals are and how you're going to obtain them. So, but again, that's time, isn't it?
yeah, it's time. And you're so right. I mean, you know, we met at a networking event. We've been to many together and separately, but it is ever more obvious when you're at a networking event. I'm sure you feel the same way that I do, but it is so obvious those people who are putting on a mask and those who can't even be bothered putting on a mask. They've just completely disassociated. So I feel like there's like three sort of different forms. There's people who are just being authentically who they are, which is at a business networking event is far and few between. Then you've got the ones who are performing with a mask on, and then you've got the ones who are there but they're not even there. Like they're like physically there, but it's like hollow on the inside. There's nothing going on in there. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. Those are definitely like those are the three categories that you get walking into any networking room. Like 100%. You've got the people who are there to show up and sell something or, you know, promote their business. And that's a great way to enter a room, 100%, especially when you're there to promote your business or sell something. And if that's not how you are all the time, then I think that, you know, you need to look at where the unalignment is there between yourself and your brand, because you should be able to show up authentically as yourself. You should be able to show up as who you are and that align with your brand and with what it is that you're in the room for. So, you know, that's a bit of a disconnect that I'll never really understand, but it happens 100%. But then, yeah, like that third class of people who are there and just kind of ticking a box in their mind in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how it works or computes, but yeah, they're sitting in the room physically, but maybe mentally and definitely spiritually. They are not there. They are not there. They're not aligned with it. It's almost just a habit to just keep showing up and hoping to get the most out of it. So, you know, to those people, I just, you know, I encourage you to just rethink. Is this the best way to spend your time? Is this, you know, the best way to be promoting your business? Because if you're showing up somewhere in a business sense, in a business capacity, but you're not actually performing in your best energy, then who are you attracting to your business? Are you attracting your ideal customer? Are you attracting the people who you're wanting to work with? Probably not.
No. But do you know what? In some weird ways, the ones who are disassociated make more sense to me than the ones who are performing. I know that that seems weird, but they seem like that at least feels at least a bit more authentic. At least, all right, but they're not pretending. I think that's why I find it a bit easier to understand. But the ones who are literally carrying on, and it's like this is not even you, or even dressing in a way that's not even them in any, because there's an agenda attached to it, just does my absolute head in, I have to say. And the ones who are disassociated, I feel really sad for. I know we went to a networking event recently, and I sat at a table full of men, and they didn't even glance up to acknowledge me in any way, shape, or form. And I was a guest there. So the whole reason for the networking thing was for them to connect with new people for their business, but they didn't even glance up at me. There was like nothing. So I just sat there and enjoyed my breakfast and minded my own business and thought that's fine. That's fine. Why am I here? But I was trying to make the most of it. But I feel sad that they must be in so much heaviness that even that feels too hard. And like, I don't feel like they were intentionally trying to be rude or anything like that. I just feel like they're clouded so significantly. And for once, I actually felt compassion instead of rage, which you have witnessed. But the I feel sad, and I feel like that's happening even outside of networking. Like, I feel like in workplaces in particular, that is happening more and more. Like, they're physically, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically, in any way, they're just not present, and they're just going through the motions. Have you noticed that with the clients that you're working with and some of the corporates that you've engaged with?
Absolutely. And it's just how you are in your personal life is how you are showing up in your business life, whether that be your 9 to 5 job or your business. It's all the same thing. And the more that you try to swap between things and become something different, or act differently to who you are as a person, the more that shows, the more that disconnect is larger, and you can't portray what it is that you want, and you can't ask for what you want, and you can't make new connections because you don't have the capacity for it. If you are operating from a place of unhappiness because your personal life is falling apart, or you're going through a really heavy moment and needing to do some healing, or you are going through a real transition with a relationship in your life, be that personal, romantic, or family, if those heavy things are happening in your personal life, it will bleed into your business life. You can't keep the two things separate. So that's why I think it's so important to do the personal healing, the personal work, that personal deep dive into finding the core and the root of these problems and addressing them, or just recognizing them. Just knowing that they're there will make a world of difference for how you're showing up into these spaces. And that not only will benefit you, your reputation, how you're wanting to show up, your energy, all of that, but it also leaves other people feeling your presence and your energy and wanting to connect with you. And as I mentioned before, it helps you to attract the people who you're wanting to work with, who you're actually calling out for. They can't find you if you're being somebody else.
Yes, that's so true. And I think that's why I feel more compassionate for the ones who are in that mode of operation and that sort of that disconnect, because the ones who are performing, that have got the masks on and sometimes look like they're wearing costumes at these events and things, to me, it feels that definitely takes a lot more energy, and it's more strategic, which is where I feel less compassion. Like that, I can see what's happening there. You can feel the they start a conversation with you, but there's something else is coming behind it. Whereas the ones who are disassociated, they are in complete and total overwhelm with their own emotions and their own feelings, and it's two different energies, and they have different effects on you when you're around them. So one feels very heavy and the other one feels irritating, you feel cautious, you're reserved, you want to run away, you want to shut the conversation down, you might want to be rude to them, whatever it is, but you don't, obviously, but you because there's manners, but the energies provoke a cycle within yourself. And we've been talking about cycles. It starts another cycle within you, because depending on the work that you've done, it has an internal effect, like all of our relationships, whether it's a conversation on, non-verbal, it starts to trigger you in different ways. And I think, and I'd be interested in your thoughts about this. Do you think there is a guilt and a shame that comes with behaving like that? Do you think those people are feeling that, sort of sitting underneath those layers, whether they're conscious of it or not? Do you think that that's what's sitting there?
Absolutely. I think guilt and shame, and those are heavy, strong emotions too, if you really think about it. Guilt and shame, just again, from past connections, lots of different things can trigger guilt and shame. But, and I obviously can't speak to a male's perspective, but definitely from a female's perspective, it's guilt and shame for not even being like, you're not supposed to be in the workforce, you're not supposed to have your own business, you're not supposed to have these things. And then I suppose, from a male perspective, it's, you're supposed to have these things and there's so much pressure attached to it. And if you're not performing where you feel is a successful level, then guilt, you feel guilt about that, you feel shame about that, and that, that can bleed into your personal life. So these two things are kind of conflicting against each other. And sitting right underneath the surface, you have these really strong emotions, which is blocking you from maybe adopting the behaviors that you're wanting to walk into a room with. And I think that that's why setting intentions before you go out and being very, very intentional with what rooms you're going into and who you want to connect with, having all of that fresh in the forefront of your mind is really important. And that will just help to alleviate some of that guilt and that shame around who we've been told we should be, as opposed to who we want to start showing up as and who we want to start moving forward as. But that transition is so tricky because you're cutting away old to welcome in new. So it's like this teeter totter that you're sitting on, like, well, how do I do that? Maybe I'll just shut up and say nothing. Maybe I'll just sit over here in the corner. And so, it's interesting to see people go through those transitions. And I think that both of those people, so the person who's showing up maybe not as authentic as they could be, and the person who's showing up just zoned out, I think it's two different stages of a business cycle. You want to get in there and you want to put your best foot forward and you want to be this person. But then maybe, on the other side of that, there's like, oh, I can't be that person. How can I tone that down, or how can I bring that back and start showing up more authentically? But that's so chalk and cheese. That's so different to who everybody knows me as. How can I show up as that person? And I think all of that boils down to, you hit a point where you just don't give any more fucks. And you got to hit that point, and then you start showing up super authentic and super intentional and, just out there to make connections, whether that is a fruitful connection, brings you an amazing opportunity, or just a fleeting moment. If you just walk into a room and you walk into a room and see what comes your way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Be open to whatever comes. That's the best frame of mind to be in. That's how I've always approached networking. And, I've made just the best connections from it because I have no expectations. I just go in. What connections am I going to make today? It's almost like a kid in a candy shop. Like, oh, what energies am I going to get to taste today? Like, who's going to be in here?
Well, you're a very curious person. We've got that in common. And you've got a beautiful really like radiant energy. So of course you're attracting lots of different people to you. And I think and we've spoken about this before, but you know, our human design, the way that we operate, throws a bit of a spanner in the works as well. I'm a projector, so it's about waiting for the invitation. So it's being present. It's not sort of chasing things. And you're a it's called manifesting generator. So that's more of a hustler mode. So it makes sense that you are, you know, you sort of got that vibe about you. But when you're in projector mode and you're, you know, waiting for the invitation, you're, for the most part, you're waiting to be seen. And that is a challenge. I've found a real personal challenge being in those environments where you've got the people performing. So, you know, you can see that that's not real and authentic. So you don't really want to be seen by them. And then you've got the ones who are disconnected. So it feels like there's no one. But then there are people like yourself who are that just light up in the room, and it only takes one. I'm happy to meet just one in any of those rooms. If it's more than that, awesome. And sometimes it's been that way. But those are the connections that you savor, and they generally relationships that form, and these people sort of form part of your community. And I especially like that. But I think you're right in what you were saying about how there are different cycles in when you run your own business. There is a different, there's like a psychosis that comes and a learning that comes within yourself, because you're all excited and hyped up at the beginning and you kind of want to sort of perform and put yourself out there and do all the things. And then there comes a point where you sort of run out of steam, you're a bit exhausted, you're sort of stuck in a same old cycle. The business is sort of gets a bit comfortable a few years in, and then you can see how if there's no inner work being done and no exploration and curiosity within, of course there's not going to be any curiosity or engagement without. And I think they're the kinds of things that we sort of actively notice when we're in those events. And again, as a society, we're seeing that with people. They're tired. Everyone is so tired. We can't even muster up a reaction to outrageous things that are happening in the world. Like big outrageous things are happening and people are just like, okay, you know, that's as much as they can muster because they're exhausted. And again, that they feel stuck in that ebb, and it takes a lot of courage to pull yourself out of it, and it takes a lot of discipline as well. What are your thoughts about moving out of that cycle?
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. It takes a lot of courage and discipline to even think about moving out of those cycles. And as humans, we want to be comfortable. I don't want to do something hard. I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. I don't want to do this. Of course not. But do you also just want to feel the same way forever? No, you don't want that either. And so it's a constant battle. And you really have to take stock of what your goals are. Like what do you really want for yourself day in and day out? Like, and yeah, you have to be brave enough to take the risk. You have to be brave enough. Otherwise, the energy just continues to suffocate itself. And that's not fun. That's not where anybody wants to actually be. Like, and so I mean, and that's why I love what I do, because I get to help people move out of that energy. You know, when they've just been sitting there brewing in their own unhappiness for so long, that's heavy. It's really heavy. And when you have to meet people where they're at, it's kind of like, oh no, we need to move this quickly and efficiently because I can't keep coming down here to meet you like this.
I got no time for that.
If you will.
No time for that.
Absolutely not. But I love it because of the way that I can work with somebody. I can push them out of that really quickly. And we kind of skyrocket through those deeper emotions. And even just rising above that really deep set just makes such a difference. A little bit of empowerment goes a really long way. And again, that feeds out into everything else that you're working on, everything else that you're putting your energy into. Passion comes from inside. The flame is inside of you. So how can you ignite that unless you go inside? You got your flint and your, your stone, and you're lighting up that spark. That spark's not going to come otherwise. So, get in there and do the work, I say.
Do you think that people are apprehensive to receiving support?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hands down, yes. You have the class of people who, I don't need help. I don't need to go and see a therapist. I don't need to, I'm fine. I'm fine. You have the fine people. Okay. And yes, you might be fine. That's okay. But then you also have the people who are, I need all the help. I need to do everything. I need to continuously heal for years and years and years on end. I don't think that that's a healthy way of dealing with it either. You need time by yourself, first and foremost. You need some time to be with you. That is where the biggest amount of growth comes from. But then you do need people to just help you along the way. And it's really hard to navigate that because the healing industry is so vast and there's so many people who work on so many different levels. It's hard to know where to go, where to start, what to do. And so I don't blame anybody for being hesitant to reaching out for help, but you've got to start somewhere, don't you? And
Of
so,
course,
just
yeah.
putting your feelers out there and stay aligned with who you are and what you want and what feels good is really the only way to navigate it.
But I think that's the other issue, is that there's a resistance to allowing the feel good things. I feel like there's people know that in order for them to come out of that ebb, they have to go through that cycle of transformation, and that means the wheel comes right down. And
They got
but
to feel their
they've
feelings
got
and
to
they got
feel
to
their
sit in their
feelings
emotions.
first. Yeah, they do, before they get to the feel good, and they want to skip to that, which is why you're seeing so many people numbing out.
Yeah.
When we're seeing that left and right, and so they kind of want to avoid the part of the transformation, but that's where the magic is. I have when I look at my career, I have transformed so many times, it's ridiculous. And just when I think I've got it all worked out, boom, here's another transformation, here's another layer, here's more of
Yeah.
me, more. And I love that, but it is, that cycle is like, and this is what we were saying before, does take courage and it does take discipline. But if you allowed yourself to receive that support, it is so much easier to navigate through, and having someone cheer you on, especially when you're running your own business. I know you do such a fantastic job with your clients because you are cheerleading for them. You're walking the path with them so that it's not so overwhelming. And even though that those first initial stages of sparking that fire can feel challenging and maybe a little bit overwhelming for the person who's about to have that breakthrough, there is a comfort that you provide them that is makes it easier, so much easier. But there's still a resistance. And
Yeah.
so I feel like for a lot of people, they wait for things to get really bad before they put their hand up and go, hey, actually, I think maybe I need some help. Do you find a lot of clients who come to see you are in that place, or are they a bit more proactive?
Yeah, I would say a large percentage of my clients have hit that stage of I'm too overwhelmed. I can't actually do anything. I'm frozen. I'm stuck. I'm blocked. I can't move. And so, yeah, they let it get that little bit too far. But again, that's where, you've got to meet someone where they're at. And that's okay. But it's about getting out of that energy as quickly as possible. And that all really comes down to recognition. As we were talking about before, when you recognize that you are choosing to feel these things and then not doing anything about it, that that's where the work comes into it. But it is challenging and it's uncomfortable, and it really goes against everything that we've been told we should have. We should be comfortable. We should be, you know, we should switch off and zone out and do all of these things. And now there's so many things that you can do to zone out. And and it's a really easy, comfortable way of living. And you can just keep on going in that way. But it's those people who want more, those people who don't want to pacify their emotions and their feelings any longer, and they actually want to take action. Those are the people who find me, fortunately. And those are the people who I love to work with, because they are willing and they are able. Sometimes they just need a cheerleader to hold their hand and help bring them out of those depths and show them that there is light on the other side of it. That you have to go through the dark, but you'll get to the light on the other side of it.
Yeah, and that's all about not spiritually bypassing as well, which I find a lot of coaches do, right? It's about sort of skipping over the feelings, the bad
Yeah.
feelings, and just getting to the good stuff. And sometimes that's appropriate, but most of the time it isn't, because there's those old shadow aspects come back. They come back, and they usually come back with a full vengeance. And I love that with the work that you do with your clients, you are encouraging them to face the belly of the beast,
Yeah.
but also explaining to them and guiding them through, so they're not stuck in that space. Because it is heavy when you start to go through the cycle, the transformation cycle. There definitely is a heaviness, but you support your client so beautifully through that process. But it's not band-aiding. And
Yeah.
that's to me, that's what true healing is, and that's what true support is. And again, I see that as a gap with a lot of coaches, and a lot of business coaches as well, then that there's no incorporation of that side of things, where the shadow aspects is where the gifts are, where the knowledge is. Do you feel like that?
100%. Yeah, you have to dive into that shadow, and you've got to get dirty. You've
Yeah.
got to go in there and immerse yourself in it, but that's not a place where you should stay. And when I say immerse, I don't mean relive. I don't mean go back to, I don't mean, conjure up the feelings and the but you have to know what it is. You have to know what it is that's in the darkness. Because, like you said, that's where the gold is. That's where the learnings are. That's where the transformation happens. And it's not until you get to the other side of it with the perspective and the hindsight and all of those delicious things that you get from the darkness, when you bring them out into the light, you're more aligned with who you are. You can show up, you can be more present, you can give more, you're able to fill your cup more for yourself. You're not reliant on others as much. Like it's a beautiful process, as hard and challenging and ruthless as it is at times. It's such a beautiful process. And to watch people be able to come through it and take the risk and make the jump and have the strength to continue on when those little moments start to repeat themselves and come back with that vengeance that we were talking about. It's about being able to handle that better, be able to respond to it and not be so reactive. And, those are the little things that you get out of the crying and the boiling up of the blood and all of those things that are in the darkness. What you get from that is just so much more perspective, awareness, happiness, joy, being able to disconnect enough from different circumstances. You're not taking things personal, and you can just flow through life and it's beautiful. I encourage everybody to at least think about starting it, start that journey, because the faster you do it, the faster you move through it, and yeah, take it all on board.
Absolutely. I feel like the being curious about how things are connected is a really good place to start. Like when I've worked with clients in the past, and even for myself personally, it feels less overwhelming starting with like how is that connected to these other things, this particular emotion, how's that connected, or how is this experience connected to these other things. And it's not about excavating and going right back into all of the wounding and everything, but understanding, taking the time to understand how things are connected.
Yeah.
I feel is like it's like a little baby step in between facing it all. And I'm curious, from your perspective, do you feel like that is an easy step for clients to take to even sort of approach things in that way, or is there still resistance with that too?
I yeah, I curiosity is a big, I don't know, emotion? Is it an emotion? Curiosity is a big tool to use to help you unlock all of this gold, all of these learnings. And it comes back to those lessons, like, what does this have to teach me? And if you start sitting with yourself, giving yourself a moment to ask that question, what did this connection, what did this relationship, what did this situation have to teach me? And you're open to the answer of that, then that's just, yeah, that's a gift. That's where you want to be. And when you start getting curious about that, that's when you know that you're ready to address some of these deeper things and, start doing the work. If you're not asking yourself those questions, if you're still blaming other people for things, then, maybe you're not quite ready to dive in so deep. But again, like I feel so blessed that I have such an amazing network of people that I trust with my clients. So I if I'm not the right step for where they're at, then maybe, I've got an amazing group of people who work at all different levels and on specific areas of the healing process that all collectively will give you a really holistic, all encompassing kind of approach to your very unique and individual circumstances. And so I just feel so lucky that I do see people at all of these different cycles of the choice to heal
Yeah.
and be able to point them in the direction of who is going to be able to help them through that specific area. And and I'm so grateful that they allow me to help guide them as well, because it's tricky to navigate. It's really hard when you have everybody offering you the solution. Everyone's offering you the thing there. Everyone wants to be your guru and fix you and give you all of the things, and it's kind of like, what works for Jack might not work for Sally. And, or maybe it will, but maybe it's farther along the process for somebody else. So it's really important to have that trust within yourself and have that really strong connection with your intuition to allow you the grace to navigate your path and to be able to know what is right for you and what resonates and what sits well. And also, more importantly, what doesn't.
Yes, what doesn't sit well. And that, I mean, on social media, you see there's like, everyone is a coach of some kind, or, some sort of healer, and everyone's got the answer. And that comment that you said before about, them saying, oh, I want to fix you, that is part of the problem. That's part of the those who are wanting to help clients skip and bypass the real work, the shadow work, because it's a hard thing to facilitate, and it is very challenging being the pit with your clients. It takes a lot of energy to do that. So I can see why they'd want to play superficially, but they're doing people a disservice. And to me, healing isn't about fixing. And it took me years to understand that. I spent so much time in the cycle of healing, thinking that I needed to change, but I didn't need to change. I needed to be in acceptance. But that internal fight of of fixing versus accepting was, I mean, it was a roller coaster. Sometimes I was in acceptance and sometimes no. And working with a shadow is where you learn to come into that acceptance, where you're okay with all the parts you don't really like about yourself, the parts that are naughty, the parts of you that might, be a bit cheeky, the parts of you that might be a bit fiery, the parts of you that might want to be a bit rebellious and so forth, the parts of you that has been wounded and that's gone through a lot of grief, the parts of you that is sad, that all forms part of the shadow. But if you stay too much in the fix it mode, you're not actually going to be able to move into acceptance. And that's why I love that you are using all the different resources in your own network, depending on where the client is. And that's what you were saying, depending on where they are, they might not be ready for you yet. They might have to go see, person A to do some pre-work first. They might be a bit further along and they need just business stuff, so that you might send them somewhere else. All these, there's a range of people that you have in your network that you do that with. And I think that also is one of the reasons why you are a change maker and you stand out, because you're not attached to just having another client. You're thinking about them. You're thinking about who's the best person to help them transform out of this scenario. And I love that about you. And that's why you're one of my besties. And it's because you demonstrate so much integrity in that way. There's no agenda, there's no nothing. Everything is about just wearing your heart on your sleeve and genuine care. And that is such a gift for the people that you work with. And I'm sure they feel like that. Do you feel like that?
I do. Again, I just feel so lucky. I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky with just the whole journey that I have been able to experience so far for every client that's ever come across my chair, my couch, wherever you've seen me. It's been a journey. But yeah, I feel so lucky that this is what I get to do. Like even my title, holistic coach, that kind of was bred out of, communicating what it is that I do. I didn't have a label for it because really I am just me. I am genuinely curious about people. I'm genuinely happy to sit where you are and listen and guide you and give you my honest honest opinion on things, and yeah, show you the way. I'm happy to share my information. I'm happy to share my contacts. I'm happy to share everything that I have in order to get you closer to where you want to be. But I am of no disillusion that I can help everybody do everything. Absolutely not. I can listen to anybody about anything virtually, but I can't do it all. I just can't. And as much as my ego wants to tell me that I can, I can't. I've healed that part. I've come to terms with, that side of me who is confident, and I know what I am capable of, and I am more than happy to give you all of that. But I also know where my limitations are, and I'm not going to take you on a ride that's not going to benefit you. A
Yeah.
lot of my clients come to me because they've been somewhere else and had an experience. Let's just put it that way. If you want to put good, bad, or alternative on there, I'll let you do that. But people have had an experience and it hasn't given them the the piece that they were looking for. And that's where so many of my clients are when I first connect with them. And from there, it's almost harder because you have to undo that work and reinstate their trust in the process. So it makes it trickier, but at the end of the day, it's all lessons. It's all lessons learned. You know, if you were a little bit opposed to going to see one person, but didn't really listen to that, and then you went anyway, and then you had like not the best experience, and you know, hey, that's a lesson. Maybe next time when you feel that feeling, you'll be able to connect that with something that maybe isn't going to give you the outcome that you want. So it's just about opening people's minds to what the energy is telling them. And again, connecting them to their intuition, doing that inner work, that inner connection is so important, so important. And it is connected to everything, all aspects of life.
Absolutely. And even after you start seeing a client for a while, that cycle and that relationship may um mean that it's time for them to go find somebody else. Like, you know, coming back to the beginning of our conversation about relationship cycles, that even happens with the coaches, the therapists, the people that you see um, for your internal deep dive. That happens too. They outgrow you. I've worked with lots of different people personally, but my clients too, there comes a point, especially when I was a kinesiologist, there comes a point where it's like, okay, I think we've gone the distance with what I can share with you and teach you. Now it's time for you to explore something new. And it's not a spoken thing, but they just know that it's time. And of course, the universe will present those people to you when it's time. At the moment, I'm um, doing a lot of work on the divine feminine side of things. So there are a lot of healers and coaches and stuff in that space, a lot. And it is very overwhelming trying to ascertain who is the best person to help you. There are a lot of people focused on the more spiritual aspects. There's some people who are wanting to talk to you about the spiritual side and the business stuff together. There's some who are very much just on the business side only. From your perspective, when choosing a coach or a therapist to help you, what is the thing you most want our audience to understand? And other than trusting themselves, is there anything else that you most want them to know about how to connect with the right person? Because again, we know that there's a lot of people that aren't that great and say, you know, offer you the world, and then they're not able to deliver. So to remove the apprehension to receive that support, what would you most want them to know?
Yeah. If you're going to take the risk, then give yourself time and grace. Here it comes again. Seems to be repeating. Give yourself the grace to find the right person. That takes time. And first and foremost, I think that that's really big. Allow them to show themselves to you. People will always show you who they are. So I think that that's really important. Ask questions. And you know, and again, it comes back to when we connect with somebody on any path, like you were mentioning, the guilt and the shame lies just underneath the surface of how we exit a connection. And I have a strong background in hairdressing. And you know, people form these connections with their hairdressers that is unbreakable bondage. Like, I just want to see my hairdresser today. And I've I know all about that. Our connection is unbreakable because I know how great she is. And but when somebody maybe has been with a hairdresser for so long, or a healer, or anyone in any capacity that they're working with, um, to break that, you feel guilty. Like, oh, but I've put so much in this and I've invested so much in this. If I go and see somebody else now, is that a betrayal? Is that disloyalty? Is that, you know, oh, what am I going to do? And so they again, they just keep on showing up to that person and keep on booking in and keep on obtaining their services when you've hit a ceiling. And it's the coach, the hairdresser, the, accountant, whoever it is, when they keep on allowing that person to come back in, that's where the disconnect is. It's you have to be honest about where your capacity is. And it's not to say that that person won't come back around, but right now I've helped you through this leg of your journey. And why don't you try speaking to X, Y, or Z? And then let me know how that goes. How did it feel? What did you gain from that? But like you said, it it really does come into that intuition, like what feels right to you when you're looking at different people. Then let them talk to you about the work that they do. And if more and more of that starts to make you feel safe and looked after and held, and you really feel like you can ask them any question and feel comfortable about that, no matter where you are in your journey. I know question asking can be a hard hurdle to jump over, but it's so important. If you want to get the most out of your investment into yourself, you've got to ask the questions. You've got to be able to extract the information from the person you're wanting to work with to make sure that you can get what it is that you truly desire from making that connection.
Yeah, and it's also about standing up for yourself as well. Like
Yeah.
there's a responsibility that comes, yes, you're going to receive a great deal of support, but you have to do some of that work and you have to own those decisions beforehand. And because if you are just choosing someone willy-nilly and things turn to shit for whatever reason, then it's really easy to blame the person that you're working with, right? On their promises that they didn't deliver, or, you're not making any progress, or they're not, the agreement's been broken in a number of different ways. I've worked with people like that, but it was me. I didn't ask the questions. I didn't take the time to understand where the boundaries were and what was going to happen. I was working with a therapist who thought it was a really good idea to completely change. So I signed up for, like, the sessions were going to be on a Friday at, say, 10 o'clock. And she completely changed the day, like 2 days beforehand. And I was like, what the, those kinds of things, that they're the things that put people off. But also, again, you've got to take some responsibility and stand up for yourself and ask the questions. Is this likely? What would happen in these circumstances? You have to do your due diligence in a
Yeah.
way. And then there's the component of trusting your intuition. But again, and this comes back to what we've been talking about this entire time, you've got to trust that the cycle will end when the cycle ends. The lady who I was just talking about, the cycle ended pretty quickly. I paid for the whole thing. I think it was like 9 sessions or something, and I got to 3, and then it was over after that, because I couldn't continue to participate. Did I get that money back? No. Would I have? No. But the cycle had to close. I couldn't continue working with someone that was operating like that. But at the same time, we've got to be okay that we got what we needed, and not to
Yes.
give ourselves a hard time. And the same with hairdressers as well. I mean, that's such a beautiful example of attachments and cycles, right? Because they're human beings, hairdressers, whether we like it or not. They're human beings with their own life, and they're able to make decisions. But I remember I had a hairdresser. This is when I was blonde, and having a hairdresser that can do blonde well, when you're so naturally dark, is art form, right? When they do it properly.
100%.
And I was very fussy, and I had a hairdresser, and she was amazing. And then she decided to live her own life and get married and have a baby, and she left. And I was devastated because I was attached to her, and the thing is that, it's we have to be in acceptance that things will naturally conclude. They can't stay the same forever. And we have to take that leap of faith. And that's what you were saying. You have to take that leap of faith and that risk that you're going to land wherever you're supposed to land, whether it's the experience you want it to be or not.
Yep.
And not everything is long lasting. It's not meant to be that way.
Yep, exactly. And you get to choose. You get the choice. As soon as something starts to feel a little bit off, or as soon as something, presents an exit, then you've just got to ask yourself the question, am I ready to get off here? Have I learned what I needed to learn from this connection? Am I ready to move on to something else? Am I ready for a new hairdresser? Am I ready for a new coach? Whatever it is, am I ready to do that? And then you need to start, the process in making it happen. And also see it as such a blessing. You get to make a new connection. You get to try something new. You get to transform in a different way. You get to exchange with a different energy. Like, it's not a bad thing. And I think that that's, again, going back to that guilt and that shame. It's not a bad thing to transform. We're supposed to transform. We're supposed to change. We're supposed to grow and expand and want bigger, better, different for ourselves. And the more you lean into that and allow yourself to do those things, just the happier you are. And that goes back into, that divine feminine energy. Like, award that to yourself, award it, whether you're wanting to love on yourself, whether you're wanting to heal something, whether you're wanting to go bigger or better in your business. It's that balance of that feminine and masculine, and the absence of the toxicity that, can come with both of those aspects. But it's finding the balance in both of those things to get you through to the other side. And that's what helps you make the best choice for you.
Absolutely. And staying unattached. Don't be attached so tightly to things, to people, to experiences. That's my advice. Don't stay so attached, because things will change. And the more tightly you hold on, like that hairdresser that I was talking about, energetically, if it was a caricature, it would have been me holding on to her leg going, no, don't go. You can't hold on so tight to things. Life has to change and it has to move. It is not healthy to be so attached, but you've gone into a comfort zone, a very serious comfort zone, when things like that are really disruptive. You've let yourself go too far. And that's why continuing to work on the shadow aspects within yourself is important, because it's usually behaviors that sit within the shadow that create those attachments, right?
100%. If you ever feel the urge to hold on to someone's leg, then you need to start, call me. It means you've gone too far. Okay. If you want to, no.
For sure. I mean, you see that though. You see, you even see that. You even see that in romantic relationships. That person, one person is clinging on for dear life, and the other person is toxic as anything, and you see them just holding on like, no. But if they just let go, they would experience a new connection somewhere else, something that's far more healthy. But again, it's about facing the shadow, and it means facing the wound. It means facing the grief. It means facing the sadness. And they're all the things that I guess as a society people feel is too hard. And that's what, as change makers, that's what we're here to reinstill in our society and in our community is it's okay, you're safe to do that exploration. It is a good thing. It is a good thing to do that, and we can do that as a community. You can do that in group settings. You don't even have to do that one-on-one if you don't want to. There's so many different ways that you can approach it, and that's again why I love interviewing people like yourself, because it's to help people remember why they need to do that work, but also where the support is. And I wanted to ask you, what do you love most about being a change maker?
Ooh, what do I love most? I mean, the whole thing just gives me a warm and fuzzies. Like just being able to go in and help people to make change, and each person that decides to make a change, that just, adds to the collective being able to change and the vibration lifting a little bit higher. So yeah, I love being able to crack people open and allow them to feel again in some cases, but also allow them to, yeah, just connect a little bit more with themselves and feel more comfortable and confident and empowered just to go out and live their best lives, because that's what we all want at the end of the day. But so many of us don't know what that even is, what that looks like, how that feels, what that even entails. So yeah, I love just being able to help people discover who it is that they want to be. So as a change maker, to be able to make that change in someone's life, to go from not knowing to knowing, girl, it's
Yeah.
the best. It's the absolute best.
And I've seen the people that you've helped. I've seen those transformations in real time, and you're a beautiful human, and you are a change maker. I've said that to you a few times in our discussion today, but you're just such a beautiful person, and I am so happy that you joined me on the show. I kind of had to bribe you a bit, but that's okay. I had to harass you a bit to come and join me. I shouldn't have to do that, because your story, your experience, and your thoughts are worthy of being shared, young lady. And I I will have you back again because we've got more topics to talk about. But the the uh, the cycles of relationships is, I felt like it was an important one for us to share, because we're seeing that together in lots of different aspects. Like I've said, we've been in the business arena together. We've got the friendship side of things as well, but um, I think shining more light on the cycles of relationships, whether personal or professional, is important. So I'm so glad that we talked about that today.
Yeah.
How can the audience best connect with you?
Ooh, connect with me. Look, I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, but that is a really fantastic way to get in touch with me. I am there and contactable all the time. So that is at by Aashly _ holistic coaching. Instagram is a great way, or my website, which is holisticcoachingbyashly.com.au. Pretty sure. No, that is it.
It is, yeah.
And yeah, those are probably the two best ways to get a hold of me. There's lots of content on there, lots of new things coming soon as well. So yeah, stop in and say hi. Don't be a stranger, as we've just discussed. I love making new connections, and I feel like everyone connects at exactly the right time for exactly the right reasons. So reach out. Love it.
Yes, and I'll include the links to your Instagram and your website as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, Aashly. Beautiful human you.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being able to have this conversation. Now we get to share it with everybody else.
Woohoo! All right, gorgeous. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Mwah.